A sick pit bull at an animal shelter was scheduled to be euthanized, but everything changed when a 2-year-old girl noticed him and felt a deep sympathy, completely altering his fate. On a beautiful spring morning, Audrey was stirred awake by the sound of little feet tapping impatiently down the hallway. Her 2-year-old daughter, Gigi, had been begging for a pet for months, watching the neighbor's golden retriever play outside the window. Gigi often put on a dramatic display of tears and tantrums, crying, "I want a puppy. Please give me a puppy." Audrey would brush it off with a gentle, "You're still too young. You can't take care of a pet by yourself." But deep down, it wasn't just Gigi's age that worried Audrey. She feared what might happen. What if Gigi accidentally hurt the animal, or worse, what if the pet bit her precious little girl? However, that morning, Gigi was more persistent than ever, and eventually, Audrey agreed to go to the animal shelter to look at the pets there. An hour later, mother and daughter arrived at the shelter. From the cages, dozens of clear dog eyes and cute cat faces looked back at them. Gigi marched ahead, curiously looking around but not focusing on anything in particular. Suddenly, Gigi stopped sharply at a far dark corner where a lonely, medium-sized brown dog was whining pitifully. When Audrey came closer, she was very surprised. The pit bull sitting behind the bars looked utterly miserable. The poor thing smelled as if it hadn't been washed for several months. Its yellowed eyes, due to some illness, constantly teared up, and snot ran from the dog's nose. Audrey immediately thought she would never take this unfortunate creature home and wanted to call her daughter to leave. But Gigi behaved in a completely unpredictable way. Gigi plopped down right on the floor next to the cage and stretched her tiny hand inside toward the face of the sick pet. "Doggy, come to me, doggy," she called out in her ringing voice. The dog, in response, whined pitifully and shrank back into the corner. Audrey watched with a pounding heart, fearing that the rather large dog might be vicious. However, the pit bull showed no aggression. It just looked pitifully at the people standing next to its cage. Gigi managed to reach the dog and stroked its ear. The pet clearly liked this, having apparently forgotten what love and affection felt like. The dog lay down on the floor, happily letting the little girl stroke her while Gigi giggled joyfully. This scene touched not only Audrey's heart, but also that of the shelter employee accompanying them. The staff member paused for a moment and then decided to tell them the truth. It turned out that this pit bull had been at the shelter for a long time, and no one wanted to adopt him due to his sickly appearance. Because of this, the dog was scheduled to be euthanized in the near future since the shelter lacked the funds for his treatment. Despite her very young age, Gigi seemed to understand that the pit bull had faced a hard fate and needed help. "Doggy sick, doggy hurt," Gigi sobbed, wiping her wet eyes with her little fists. It seemed she could feel all the pain and suffering of the poor creature. At that moment, Audrey's heart finally gave in. She hugged her daughter and spoke the fateful words, "Don't cry, my love. We will take this doggy and cure him." Gigi immediately beamed with a happy smile, radiating infinite gratitude. At that moment, Audrey hoped her daughter would soon tire of the sad, sick dog, and they would eventually return her to the shelter. But things turned out completely differently. From that day on, a completely new chapter began in the family's life. Upon arriving home, they tried to create the most comfortable conditions for the dog. They prepared a soft bed with a warm blanket, took out clean rags and bowls for food and water from the pantry. Gigi happily helped her mom carefully wash the dog and even came up with a beautiful name for her, Scarlett. The satisfied dog whined pitifully and caught every movement of the little girl with a devoted and grateful look. In the first few days in her new home, Scarlett behaved very quietly and meekly, following her little owner wherever she went. As soon as Gigi left the room, the pit bull immediately began to whine pitifully, trembling in anticipation of her return. It seemed the little girl was Scarlett's only connection to a new life filled with love and care. Audrey watched adoringly as her daughter happily played and frolicked with her first pet. A few days later, the family took Scarlett to a veterinary clinic. Gigi flatly refused to stay home, wanting to support the pet during her visit to the vet at all costs. After a thorough examination, The veterinarians even performed a small surgery, and Gigi eagerly awaited the return of her new friend. Soon, Scarlett was back with her owners, along with the medications necessary for her full recovery. At home, Audrey and Gigi strictly followed all the veterinarian's recommendations, and Gigi never left her beloved pet's side, always wanting to participate in her treatment. Several weeks passed, and there was no trace of Scarlett's illness left. She was now a completely healthy, energetic dog that adored her kind owners, especially little Gigi, who had essentially saved Scarlett's life that day at the shelter. Scarlett's eyes were no longer dim and hopeless. Her brown eyes now shone with joy and loyalty toward her little owner. Scarlett quickly became a full member of the family that had rescued her from the shelter. Each new day was filled with games, walks, and fun adventures. Gigi taught Scarlett various commands, and the dog, grateful for her cozy home and the unconditional love from her new family, willingly obeyed. Scarlett quickly learned everything Gigi showed her, and each of their new successes brought joy to the entire family. Audrey smiled as she watched her daughter interact with her furry friend, feeling her heart swell with pride and happiness. She saw how tenderly Scarlett licked Gigi's face after successfully performing a command, and how the girl laughed in response, hugging her loyal companion. In those moments, Audrey knew that taking Scarlett from the shelter was one of the best decisions of her life. Soon, Audrey decided that Scarlett had adapted well enough to her new home to start participating in dog events. They signed up for training courses, where Scarlett not only consolidated her successes, but also made friends with other dogs. Gigi proudly watched her smart dog, and Scarlett always looked for her little owner's gaze in the crowd, seeking her support and approval. One day, Audrey and Gigi organized a small party for Scarlett, celebrating exactly 1 year since she became part of their family. They invited friends and their pets, arranged fun games and competitions for the dogs. Scarlett was thrilled with the attention and the treats that had been especially prepared for her. Gigi made a large, bright poster with photos of Scarlett and words of thanks for her friendship and loyalty. In the evenings, when it got cool outside, the whole family gathered in the living room. Audrey read books aloud. Gigi drew, and Scarlett happily lay at their feet, listening attentively and sometimes quietly grumbling in her sleep. These moments were full of coziness and warmth, and each member of the family deeply cherished the time they spent together. One day, during one of their walks, Gigi noticed that Scarlett was particularly playful with another dog in the park. The little girl quickly became friends with the pet's owner, and this acquaintance turned into a new tradition. Now they met every weekend for joint walks, and Scarlett found not only a family but also a true friend. Audrey often reflected on how much their lives had changed over the past year, beginning with that fateful day they first stepped into the shelter. Their world had been transformed, now overflowing with joy and purpose. The house was filled with a sense of peace and calm. Gigi's laughter and playful energy created an atmosphere of pure happiness, while Scarlett, deeply in tune with every moment of the child's joy, grew more confident, gentle, and utterly devoted to her new family. For Audrey, there was nothing more precious than witnessing the perfect circle of love and harmony that had formed around her daughter. It was a beautiful reminder of how the life of a once forgotten and unfortunate creature could be completely transformed through care and love.